Hi everyone, thanks for joining. I'm just going to give everyone a couple more minutes to join and then we're going to get started.
I don't think they're all completely unbothered.
Hey, look. Hi everyone. Just so you all know, this is going to be a sharing session. You don't have to be on camera if you don't want to, but hopefully everybody is going to get a chance to kind of share about their cohorts and things like that. I'm going to do a little bit of an introduction in a minute when we start, and I have got my colleague Annie, who is here with me, who is in the chat. So if you have any questions as we go, or you want to kind of share anything in the chat, please do feel free to do that. I'm going to probably give it 2 or 3 more minutes and then we're going to get started. But if you want to kind of introduce yourself in the chat, it will be helpful. I know that you've already filled in a little bit about what you're hoping to get out of today, but if you've got any more information about a cohort that you're focusing on or what you specifically want to get out of the session, pop it in the chat and we can hopefully make sure we get that covered for you. And we'll start in a few minutes. Hi everyone. So for those of you who have just joined, thank you so much. We're going to get started in a few minutes. If you want to just introduce yourself in the chat, have a bit of put a bit of information in there about what you're hoping to get out of today, that would be really helpful. I think that we're waiting on about 5 more people, so I'll give it another minute or so and then I'll get started. Right, in the interest of time, I think we will start just because I want to try and get through this and not keep you all the way until 5 o'clock if I can. Annie, if you wouldn't mind in the background just starting the recording for me, and as I know there are a couple of people who weren't able to attend who wanted it recorded.
Yep, that's going.
Perfect, thank you so much. Right, well, thank you so much, everybody. It's really nice to have you all here today to our first EastConnect session. Obviously, as you know from the emails that you've been sent and the things that you've had so far, what we really wanted to focus on today is this idea of thinking about supporting a target cohort and pulling together a bit of a framework to help you to do that. So just to give you a bit of context before we start of what this is, for those of you who don't know me, my name's Becky. I'm the Director of Delivery at East Learning. And where these sessions have kind of come about is we've had a lot of feedback through the work we've been doing at schools, recently, and with some local authorities and trusts, that what is actually really helpful and everybody is really excited about getting involved in is a bit of a networking session with other leaders to get some helpful frameworks, but really just to share ideas and share practice around the various different areas of personal development and different things like that, so that you guys can be making sure that you're working smarter, not harder, and with that little amount of time that you have, that you've got the kind of key things in place to help you to do really effective work. And also, again, like I say, just to share that practice with like-minded people and people who are in similar positions to you. So hopefully that is what today will be. I just wanted to caveat this at the beginning by saying this is our first one. So any feedback that you have after the session on things that could be more helpful or other things that you'd like to see included would be great. We're planning on doing one more of these this year, and then into next year we'll be running a couple of different ones on different areas. So whether that be thematic things, so career sessions for careers leaders, for example, or other sessions like this. But again, any feedback you have on what would be most helpful, please do send it our way. Right, so in terms of what we're going to do today, what I'm going to do is I'm going to give a bit of an introduction as to why we're doing this and what the kind of general premise is. And then most of the session, it's just really going to be a chance for you guys to share what you've already got and how you could potentially put some of this stuff into practice in your setting for whatever target cohort you are thinking about. So again, just by way of context, where this has come from is we are currently doing a lot of work with schools, but more specifically with local authorities and regions, most recently in Oldham and in Bristol, where we've been looking at and getting a lot of feedback around changing the way that you look at setting up a plan and a provision to really focus on a very individual and start with a very individual target cohort to allow you to have a really targeted and effective approach that then informs your overall universal support that you're putting in place for your students and young people. So that's where this work has come from. And as I say, we've been doing a lot of work with schools across the country on this over the last year. And a lot of the feedback has been, you know, how can we share this? How can we share ideas? Which is where today has come from. So based on that, obviously, we know that there are a lot of challenges in terms of setting up provision and support for students. The first one being you've got a lot of young people and you've got a lot of students, and focusing on supporting everyone at the same time could actually end up meaning that you're impacting no one. So we really want to make sure that that focused support is there and that you've got that understanding of your students, of their full profile, so you can put in place that really targeted support. We've got limited time and resources, so prioritization is key, wanting to make sure that what you're putting in place is most effective. And obviously there is a lot of information available to you about your young people and your students, and what we have really been trying to work on and what we've been working on with our schools is that the right information that we need, and are we using it well? Now, what we have tended to see in terms of the work that we've done in the past with schools and how schools generally approach this is this idea of a personal development approach, which is usually very thematic. So what we see is that most of our schools will look at, okay, what are we going to do universally for our students, for careers, for inclusion, for attendance, for well-being, and we get stuck on that very thematic approach, which is often helpful and obviously led by staff, because you will have leads in those areas who need to focus on everything that's going on under that umbrella that they are in charge of. But what we have, the feedback that we've had, and specifically through the work we've done in Oldham, we've seen that actually it's helpful for schools to take a step back and start a little bit more specific and targeted to make sure that initially we're getting that offer right across all of those things for our most vulnerable groups, in order to actually inform that universal offer and make it a little bit more targeted and data-led. So the feedback, again, what we've been working on is looking at this targeted approach, which allows us to focus on impact over activity and do that working smarter, not harder, to be confident that what you're putting in place for your students, the young people, is the right thing for the right groups. So we've gone from this universal approach to a more targeted approach for your group, thinking about what does great look like in all of those areas for a specific group of students, and how can we put in place those individual interventions to address that, to make sure that school is a great place for our targeted individuals to be thriving and developing and engaging. And then, as I've said, what then works well for those targeted cohorts should inform what then goes into your universal offer to support all of your students in all of those different key functional areas. And the key here, and something I really wanted to speak about before we go ahead and talk about this in your setting, is that the key here is that what schools have found most helpful when working through this framework is that it's repeatable. So you can do this for a really small group, you can look at a very targeted specific group, and then once you get that going, you can repeat it for any group that you like. And that doesn't necessarily just have to be your vulnerable students. That could be your gifted and talented students, or it could be your kind of middle ability students. So whoever it is that you really want to have that impact on, this is a repeatable process that you can go again and again with whatever groups of students are most helpful for you to work with. So there's a 4-step process that we want to follow.
Obviously touched the nerve. Maybe I'll have to text them and apologise.
We are going to first of all go through that, understanding the students, making sure we've identified our group, have the plan, and then the key is that regular review. So when we say understanding the students, what we're talking about here is obviously you will already have a range of data on their behaviour, their attendance, their attainment that is easily accessible to you. But what schools have found really helpful is looking at that below the surface understanding, and do they have a full robust profile of all of the students' needs and interests, which allow you to really target your conversations and understand how you can best engage them moving forward. And once you've done that, what you'll often find is there will be patterns and there will be trends that come out across your groups, which means that you can really focus on those group interventions as well. So once you've done that for everybody, obviously we want to identify your target group. Now here, and again, I know that a lot of you have sent in groups and will probably have in your head groups of students that you are keen to focus on. The key for this one is keeping it focused and manageable. And what we've seen in a lot of schools is that I was actually in a school just 2 weeks ago or a couple of weeks ago, and they said we want to look at all of our persistently absent students. And what we found is when we pulled that together, actually that was a really big list and it was quite difficult to know where to start with it. So actually, if you have that higher level of understanding of your students, and the deeper you go here, the easier the planning will be. You can really look at drilling down to narrowing down that target cohort so you have an easier starting point. So for example, if you know that year 7 boys are your focus, actually if we look at, we've got a smaller percentage of our year 7 boys who have got low self-esteem and are really struggling with that sense of belonging in school and feeling close to other people. So there's our target 20 students that we're just going to focus on, and we're going to put really targeted plans in place for them to help to move them forward. Once you've done that, you may find that you want to go back and get more information through surveys, however you want to do it, student voice, of building up that student profile for your target group if there are any gaps. And then it's just a case of making that plan and reviewing it. So have you got all the right team members involved? Have you got those follow-up conversations with the students? Is it clearly documented, and do people have easy access? These are all the things that we found that schools had gaps in or weren't necessarily hitting all of those marks, which made it really difficult to actually move the plan forward. And again, another key piece of feedback we got here on there was making the plan and then actually acting on it. Schools were finding that actually they had the plans in place for the students, and some of the staff knew what it was, but because it hadn't been communicated effectively back to the student, it wasn't that helpful because they didn't know what it was and how their school was supporting them. And then that regular review, having those monthly check-ins, making sure that you have a scale that you can go into every month and an indicator that demonstrates whether or not you're having that impact, so that you can go, okay, this hasn't worked, let's change our approach with this student, what else do we need? And again, something that to bring in here is that the work that we're doing at local authority level is really key here, in that this shouldn't just be the things that the school is doing. It should be that you are able to then bring in external agencies or, you know, support in your local area, whatever it is that can help you to build up that team around the student approach and allow you to be really targeted with that, and also give feedback on what's missing and what you need more of from your local authority or from, you know, your surrounding area, that will allow you to be more effective with support for these students. Okay, so before I get you to have a think about what this looks like in your setting, first of all, I just wanted to give you an example just to put it into context a little bit. So This is from, I've pulled out an example which I think is hopefully relevant to some of the people who have joined today. So focus group being pupil premium, middle ability boys who are not engaged in school. So first of all, understanding your students and what could that look like. So using things like student voice, as well as all of the data that you already have on them, to be able to look at, right, within this group, we can actually see that 7% of those boys have a low wellbeing score. And this is particularly influenced by them feeling like they're not relaxed and they can't deal with problems well. So that's kind of that deeper level of understanding of that could be where we start. Less of them think that they're likely to go to university compared to our school average. So that could be something that we want to look at. 30% of them have less than 90% attendance, and actually a big chunk of them, 69%, are in the bottom 2 confidence levels for their academic skills. So they're underconfident with how they're doing academically as well. So immediately there, you've got that more detailed approach to be able to go, okay, so where can I narrow this down to? What do I want to look at first? So then identifying it. Okay, so from that group, there might be 25 or so students who all have that low well-being, answered that never or rarely when they asked if they're dealing with problems well, have that lower attendance, and don't think university is a likely option. So those 25 students all have those same characteristics that you have built that profile for. So actually, let's start there rather than trying to do this for every single student in that group. Let's start there and see what impact we can have immediately on that smaller group of students. So making a plan. First things first, we want to get the basics in place. We want to have something documented where we know, is there something in school already that matches their needs and interests? Do we have something available that we can signpost them to get involved in school? Do they have a trusted adult? Do they have someone that they can talk to? And if not, let's get that sorted. What's their academic plan? What does the relationship with families look like? And that, that comes out a lot in terms of the schools that we're currently working with, where that's a really key indicator in terms of engagement in school, which I'm sure all of you will be dealing with in one way or another. So those key basic things, we want to make sure that for those 25 students, are those things in place first? Then we can look at, for that whole group, what are the group interventions that we can do to support them specifically with what they are struggling with. So that group found that feeling relaxed was something that was what they were struggling with. So is there anything that we can bring in to support that within their lessons, or outside of their lessons as an extra intervention for them? How can we tailor our one-to-one careers conversations with these boys to support them and discussing their pathway options, support their aspirations, get them a bit more excited about things like university if that's something that they don't think is an option for them right now. And then thinking about those really targeted actions for individual students within that group. So what does the support around the student look like, the family, at family level, at school level? Is there anything you can bring in from local authority? And anything within school that you can specifically do with that student to support them. And then in terms of that regular review and impact, what you should then be able to do is think about the plan being completely outlined, and you've got that regular check-in for reforecasting of whatever indicator it is that you're looking at. So the example you can see on the screen here is from one of our schools, is for forecast persistent absence. So can I see that is changing over time? And if it's going up, great, what we're doing is working. If it's not going up, what do we need to do? How can we change things to make things a little bit more effective? And what you should end up with is something that, and I can share this with everybody, I'll share this with everybody after the call, but you should end up with something that looks a little bit like this, which is a full student profile that you can see along here with any information that is helpful for you to look at. So, their key characteristics, but also anything around kind of careers, well-being, anything about around their wider world and PSHE topics, what do they do outside of school that could be helpful for you to know about? And then along here, any of that contextual knowledge that you have about them, you know, do they have a trusted adult? Have they got a positive peer group? What does their academic plan look like? And what it allows you to do is just build up that profile so that you can really easily put in place some tangible actions for those students to go, yeah, this is what we're going to do with them over the next 4 weeks, over the next 8 weeks, over the next 12 weeks, whatever your time frame is, that allows you to then do that forecasting and that regular check-in. So let me just go back to this. In terms of impact, the last thing to look at is obviously, how do we know it's working? And again, from everything that I've seen in schools that have been doing this so far, the main thing that has been the most helpful is just having that really clear spectrum of where you're trying to get to. And that could look like anything, and however it is most helpful in your context. This is an example here of one of the schools, so thinking about pathways. So just having that 4-5 point scale where you're looking at where do these students come in terms of, where do we put them in terms of these buckets? Are they actively disengaged, or are they clear and confident about their post-school plans? Where do they sit on that spectrum? And actually having a realistic time frame of, if we just are moving them from one step to the next step in a 6 months to a year time period, that's great, that's progress. That's what we want to do. We want to see those small, little and often steps up to make sure that we are confident that what we're doing is actively engaging our students in our setting, wherever it is that you're working with young people, that they are then actively engaged and happy with the progress that they are making. So what I'm going to do now is, like I say, I really want this session to just be a chance for you to then think about how this could work in your setting. And I appreciate that that's a lot of information to throw at you in a quick 10-minute introduction. But I just want to give you 5 minutes to think about, for you, and from the thinking that you've done on this so far, who are your target cohort? And then, you know, have you got that right number? Would everyone agree that it's the right group? What do you already know about them? And what would you want to find out about them to help you to prioritize them? And then what actions could you take? And measuring impact, I guess, have a think about what you've already got in place in your schools, and then what other support you need to help you to be more effective at this. If you're stuck, we've sent out a couple of supporting documents for you. So in terms of using data and just kind of looking at what you could find out about your students, all of our supporting data was attached to the email that was sent out. So you can start to use that to look at the averages that are coming out from some of the student voice work that we've done, if that is helpful for your particular cohort. And just think about one actionable idea that you could take through this process to think about where it would fit. And obviously it's helpful also to think about where the barriers might be, where might it not work, where would you come unstuck in some of this stuff if you were trying to implement it in your setting. So what I'm going to do is, how many of us are there? 9. Okay, so I'm gonna set up some breakout rooms just so that you have somebody in there for 5 minutes just to discuss with and bounce ideas off of, and I'll bring everybody back in 5 or 6 minutes time so that we can start sharing and sharing ideas and ask any questions. Hi everyone, thank you. Sorry, that did cut out. I think I've forgotten that I'd set a time limit on those, so that cut out mid-sentence for some of you. Apologies. Right, so hopefully that was helpful. I just wanted to give you a little bit of a chance to just chat to each other, because I know looking at I obviously know some of you already from working with you, and then others of you that I haven't worked with before. Everybody's kind of from a slightly different context, so I think it's helpful to just chat and see what initial ideas you've got. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to reshare my screen here. So what I really want to do now is just kind of share some of the ideas, mainly just who your cohort are, and anything initially that you've discussed there. I heard some quite nice conversations going on in a couple of the rooms there around how you want to start actioning this in your school. And I think actually what is the most helpful thing here is what extra support might be helpful in terms of making this really effective and embedded in the school. Because again, from working with schools across the last couple of years, actually, one thing that we often find is that there can be a couple of people in the school who are really excited about this kind of work and getting it in there. But actually the challenge is getting everybody on board so that it's consistent for the students. And that can take, you know, a while to get that set up. So if anybody is brave enough and would like to go first, I'd love to hear your ideas.
I'll go first if you want.
Oh, thank you, Naomi.
So I'm from a primary school in a really disadvantaged area of Leicester City. And in the last year or so, we've realised that we need to work on the aspirations of our children and for them to know what's out there for them beyond what they see from their homes, because they don't see a great deal of people going to work or general aspirations. So we've done some of the surveys already with years 4, 5 and 6, but actually from that we realised that we need to work on the children actually understanding what the question's asking them. So there was a question about feeling optimistic about the future, which got a pretty positive response from our children, but actually I would consider an optimistic future about getting a good job and buying a house and doing that sort of thing. Whereas I don't know whether some of them might have ticked that they're optimistic about the future because they're going to have 5 kids, be given a home and drop the kids off at school every day and then go home and drink coffee, that kind of thing. So, and also the idea of university is so abstract to them, and a lot of it was really abstract. So the thing that we need to work on first is getting that understanding in for our children before they can then give us a baseline of where they actually are with their feelings, beliefs and aspirations for the future.
Yeah, that's really helpful, thank you. And I think, yeah, something that I'm really keen to make sure here is that everybody's got that step of having that understanding of your students that is right for your context. So, you know, however you choose to do that and however you choose to build up that student profile and that data, it's got to be right for you to know that you've got some reliable and helpful data there, so that you can work off it as a source of truth, if that makes sense. Especially because a lot of what we're talking about here and a lot of the information that is most helpful to target your planning for these students is quite abstract. So a lot of it has to be done through things like student voice, which has its challenges. So yeah, I think that's a really important point. Thanks, Naomi. Anyone want to go next in terms of sharing your key cohort and your plans for them? Yes, Catherine.
Hiya. So my context is we're in quite a disadvantaged area of Bognor Regis on the south coast. We've got a cohort of about 1,300 students, and all years from 7 to 10 currently do the surveys in the autumn term, and then they review them in the summer term. We currently look at them on quite a big scale, so we look at them year by year. We might look at the continuation between the different year groups and how things improve over time. But something we really want to do is hone in a little bit on the specific target groups so that more of our senior team are getting involved in how we can utilise the data. I think I myself at the moment and my senior line manager, Caroline, she very much uses the data as well, but it'd be really good to show others in the school just how useful it can be and what they can do with it next, particularly with your planning process that you've been through already. Almost like getting everyone on board, sort of the buy-in as well. So that's something that we're going to be working on, I think, moving forward.
Great. And do you have, Catherine, do you have a target cohort already that you know of in school that actually you think it would be really helpful to have more of this data and look more deeply into the data for this particular group of students?
Yeah, I think at the moment, particularly for persistent absentees,
Yeah.
I think that's something that we're working on as a school at the moment, and it will be good for our attendance team, which is growing as well. So now we've got a relatively large or growing team there, and an assistant principal in that area. It would be good to focus on that a bit more, I think.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you so much. And I guess just again for context from me, so where Catherine refers to the surveys there, so the surveys that Catherine has done at the Regis School is our aspiration surveys, which is part of the student voice and allowing them to build this personal development picture for their students. Again, the point of this session is not to talk just about that data. That is a way for you to get that, but actually there's lots of ways for you to build that student picture. So just because you don't have that aspirations data doesn't mean that you can't go through this process. It's just more about, like I say, building that picture however works best for your context, to have that deeper level of understanding of your students' needs and interests so that you can build that targeted support for them. But thank you, Catherine. Anybody else want to share? Yes, James.
Hi everyone. I think kind of thinking about some of the questions on the screen, I'm not particularly sure around who our cohort would be, particularly at the moment, in terms of targeting specific cohorts of students. We have got a huge gap of achievement between PP and non-PP students, so that's something that we're putting a lot of focus on. But I think probably like colleagues across the country, the attendance challenges that we're facing at the moment as well can become particularly important, and how we've tried to use the Aspirations Aspire platform, and in terms of what we're doing with it, is trying to integrate it with as much of the school as possible through our extracurricular work that we're trying to drive forward in terms of giving students a reason to come into school. That's more than just lessons, actually. If they're going to darts club or a languages club or a library club or any of those things, and trying to integrate that and having a look at the students that we can target and support with that, and to try and integrate it as well with our work on careers as well, to try and give them that aspiration. I think one of the things that we've done this year is we've had to give target, well, I say inflated target grades, but encourage students to be applying for appropriate level college courses, because we were finding a lot of our students that should have been applying for level 2 and level 3 courses were just going for level 1 courses, and actually trying to drive that through the platform as well. I think we need a greater understanding across the school about how we use the platform. It's very much been about training people this year and various things with coaching conversations, and how we can help target students as well with that. So yeah, that's me.
Yeah, great. Thank you so much. And I think it's really a key thing that you said there about attendance and engagement. What this process, again, whether you use the aspirations data or other data that you already have on your students, or other student voice data that you might gather, what it will really help you to do is understand and have that understanding of how you can re-engage and what kinds of things will re-engage your students in school, particularly for those students who aren't attending or aren't very engaged. That is a big part of the work that we have done and are currently doing another round of in Oldham across the borough, which has allowed them to look at, they knew that there was an issue with attendance, and I'm sure many of you will be sitting here in the same position, and obviously attendance is a big topic of conversation at the moment, and it just allows you to, again, it's about having that starting point and about knowing what you can do that will be effective, rather than having to kind of throw a bunch of things out there and hope that something has an impact on your students. It just, the deeper you go with that understanding level and having that student profile that I shared, which again I'll send out as an example so that you can have a look at and you can have a play with and think about, again, how you can adapt it to work in your context. it just means that you can have that really targeted approach. And I think the other key thing that a couple of you have said there is about bringing as many people into it as possible. What we've seen in lots of schools, and I'm sure many of you can relate to this, is that, as I said earlier, lots of schools will have a couple of people who are really starting to do a lot of work around this targeted support for students. But unless it's communicated to as many relevant people as possible, obviously with everything else that's going on at school, it often will get lost. So having that group of people who are really kind of responsible for and committed to moving those plans forward is really helpful, because it just means that you have that regular review and it doesn't get lost, and the students then in turn understand, you know, why they're answering these questions or why they're giving you this information, and what it is that you're doing to support them as well. Great. Anybody else wanting to share at this point? Okie dokie. I'll move on. The last bit then is, I wanted to just get your reflections before we finish and just talk about next steps. Thinking about this process and everything that we've kind of discussed so far, I think it would be good, what I'm keen for you to feel like you have is some almost tangible next steps to take away that you can then apply this to your setting. So if you were to go away and do this for, let's say, you go through this process of looking at your data and looking at everything you have available, and you identify your target group, who would you then want to be involved in this planning process that maybe isn't already, or that you want to speak to them about this, and what do you think is the best way to engage them? And then I guess your immediate next steps to start to use this effectively is another question. And again, interesting to hear if there are any barriers or anything that you think you'll come up against that maybe any part of this process and the 4-point process that I spoke about wouldn't work in your setting or in your schools. So I'll give you, again, I won't break you out again, but I'll just give you 2 minutes to have a think about that, and then ask a couple of you if you don't mind sharing just what your next steps would be. That would be really helpful. Okay, I'm gonna, just in the interest of time, and I know that I'm sure will all be keen to get off soon. So does anybody want to share around next steps and what they are kind of looking to do immediately? Yes, Neka.
Hi. Yeah, so I was just thinking about the fact that so the target cohort that I've chosen is Year 9 pupil premium boys who are predominantly middle ability and actually have target grades that are 5 and 6, but perhaps when they get to Year 11 and they start the process of post 16 options, that they are kind of just happy with getting a pass, a standard pass. So it's about kind of raising the standards there. And I've whittled it down to a cohort of about 17. I was just having a look at them. Obviously thinking about that we've got 2 heads of Year 9, really fortunately, so involving those. And then we also, in terms of our careers advisor, who has been working a lot with Year 10 and 11 already, whether to kind of book some appointments with those students, because I'm just also aware that they've just made their options as well for Key Stage 4. So kind of having those initial conversations with that cohort, getting a bit of voice from them, and also have they chosen the right options for the data that we have, and kind of that pathway that we have, you know, that we believe that they can achieve. And I mentioned in the breakout room, it's about obviously sometimes that they, you know, they're happy with that standard pass, but we want to have like no ceiling for them. We want to be able to, you know, we give them, we call them minimum target grades as their target grades, and we always say it's an absolute minimum that you are, you know, going to achieve that, because we want that aspiration. But I think especially you know, sitting down with those students and having those kind of conversations and getting that voice back is kind of where I'm going to go first.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's really helpful, because once you've got, like you said, once you have that initial data and that initial understanding, actually going back to them and getting that qualitative context from them as well is really helpful. And being able to do that in a couple of different places, so whether that be through, you know, your heads of year and getting their support, whether that be through your careers team and getting their support. I think, yeah, getting as many people involved as you can. And like I say, the most helpful thing I've seen in schools that have used this planning process for these target cohorts so far is having that one or two key people within the school or within the setting to be responsible for regularly reviewing the progress of that, what's happening. And, you know, is it having an impact? Are those conversations we're having an impact? Is this intervention having an impact on our overall indicators for these students? And if yes, great. If not, what do we need to change? And that, like I said at the beginning, that little and often approach will mean that you can be really effective at moving those students up that scale in whatever it is that you're looking to support them in. And, you know, that can be anything that you want it to be. Like I say, this is designed to be a repeatable process for as many target groups as you want. Great, thank you so much. Anybody else keen to share their reflections, next steps, any questions that you might have? No? Okay. Well, that is really everything from me. I just wanted to spend a little bit of time talking through next steps. So what we are going to do is I'm going to send you out, everybody who's been on the call today, I'm going to send out a couple of supporting materials and example resources that you can start to use to build out this and kind of work through this process with your own students. So that will all come out to you by the end of the week. And we will also have available, if you would like them, they're optional, some follow-up clinics, which will just be kind of 15-minute drop-in sessions that will happen in a couple of weeks' time, that you can use and join with myself, some members of the team, which just to ask any questions once you've started to go through this process. And anything that we can do to kind of support you with that and identifying your cohorts. I know some of you have said, you know, you're still looking into who those cohorts are and looking at how you can whittle that down using some of the data that you've got. So anything like that it's helpful for us to support with, we'll send out the details of those that you can use if you want to. And as I said, because this is our first session of EastConnect that we've run, we are really keen to make these as helpful as possible. So any feedback on today, anything that you'd like more of, less of, that it would be helpful to cover, please do drop me an email. My email's there, and send any feedback to us, just so that we can make sure that subsequent ones of these sessions will be a helpful thing for you to join and share and like I say, network with other leaders. Just again to give you a little bit of extra context around what you'll have available to you. So you've already got our data, our kind of key data pack. So in terms of the student voice stuff and that going beyond the surface around understanding your students and their needs and interests, please feel free to use as much of that data as you need to start to build a picture. What that just allows you to do is look at, that is from around 15,000 students across the UK that we surveyed last year, and it gives you quite a lot of reflective data around the averages across different groups of students in things like well-being, in aspirations, in skill confidence and things like that. So if you don't already have data for your specific students, or you don't yet have data, please feel free to use that to get an idea of what the averages look like across the country. And then I will also share with you our template planning document, which I did flash up on the screen earlier, but I will just show you again very quickly. this has been developed through a lot of the work that I've spoken about that we've done with local authority and with schools to help to build these student profiles and these student plans for target cohorts. So the idea of this is that once you have identified your target cohort, it can then be used to put in all of the student details and build those plans around those individual students. This can be changed, tweaked, the titles can be added, different bits of information can be added depending on what is most helpful for you to look at. I have just included a range of ones that schools so far have found helpful to think about. So please do have a play around with this. And the other thing to mention that is often helpful, this obviously looks at that very targeted interventions per student. It's also what other schools have found helpful is to look at, once you've got your whole target cohort in here, so your 15 to 20 students that you're really wanting to focus on, it allows you to look at trends across the group and then build out those, what are your whole cohort interventions likely to look like? What kinds of things could you put in place for this whole group to have an impact on them? So yeah, I will send this around to you. If you want to use it, please do. If it's not that helpful, like I say, change it, make it appropriate for your context. And any questions, anything that is helpful for me to clarify, or if I can give you any examples of how schools have used this previously, please do give me a shout and I'm happy to help where I can. But yeah, like I say, we'll send everything out by the end of this week, so you have access to it, and then you are free to use it however you want to. If there are any questions, I'll stay on for 5-10 minutes for any questions afterwards, but otherwise, thank you so much for joining and, you know, sharing and bringing your ideas today. It's been really, really helpful, and I hope you have found it a helpful session. And yeah, like I say, look out for an email from me over the next couple of days, and thank you so much. Thanks, everybody. Thank you. Thanks, Catherine. Thank you.
Hi, Becky. Just a quick question.
Yeah, of course.
Did you say you'd already sent out all of that information? I'm just conscious that I didn't receive it.
Oh, of course. Yeah. Yes. So let me just make sure that you have got a copy of it. So there was an initial email that went out, which basically just has links to our different data packs and things like that. The only thing that isn't in there is the planning document, which I'll send out separately, so you'll have that.
Brill, thank you.
Let me just make sure. I'm just checking that the one that I sent you, did you get the one I sent you earlier?
It was just the link. Bear with me. Let me yeah, I there's no
so if you
there's no attachments.
No,
oh, download the data pack. Yeah, yes. I can see it now. Yeah, there we go.
So if you click that, that will give you the data pack, and then remind me what school you're from, Annika.
It's part of the Marches Academy Trust.
Yes, yeah. So that data pack that's attached to that email will be just our general averages
right.
across everyone. Your data pack for IDSL, because obviously you've done this, the school's done this this work with us. If you'd like me to reshare that with you, it would have gone to I believe it's Charlotte Martin who is doing this, so she should have access to all of the data and it can be shared. But if you'd like me to, I'm happy to just reshare it with you to your email, just so you've got your specific IDSL data as well to hand.
Yes, please. I do remember I do have a paper copy because she shared it in an SLT meeting, but I'd like, yeah, if you could just share that would be great.
No probs. I'll send that over this evening and make sure that's in your inbox.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you ever so much, Becky.
All right, no worries. Speak to you soon.
And you know that sorry, that Excel spreadsheet as well, is that what you said you'd send out?
Yeah, so that will come. I'll send that out before the end of the week to everybody, so you've got a copy
Amazing.
of the template of it, and then you can use that however you want to, and obviously change it to fit whatever you want to use it for.
Brilliant. It looks really good. So yeah, thank you.
Great. No worries. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Bye.
Bye-bye.
That was good.
Thanks. I'm just going to stop the recording.